Hyundai made some pretty bold design choices to the 2024 Santa Fe. This one in behind me here is the hybrid, so it's the 1.6 liter turbocharged engine underneath the hood. On top of that, it's in the magnetic grade metallic paint, which is a beautiful little flex when you're up close and personal. It's not the color choice that I would personally go for, but it still does look pretty sharp. This is the preferred trim level of the Santa Fe, and it's the only trim level available in Canada when you look at the hybrid, outside of the available NHL package, which has, I think, only 300 available units. And you can customize it for your own unique team, which is pretty neat. Outside of that, though, strictly looking at the preferred, but down in the States, you can go for the Calligraphy trim, which has all of the available features. It's got the forward sensing system, the full 360 camera surround monitor, and so many other great ones. But even though this one isn't as fully loaded, it still does have pretty good styling and available technology. I've been showing people pictures of the Santa Fe leading up to me picking it up today, and was asking what they thought the price point was without letting them know it was a Hyundai. And they were averaging between 60 and 70,000, so around 65,000 average, which is not the price point for this. Starting off in Canada at around 44,000, and then in the States at 38,300, with the price obviously going up depending on how you have it built out. Because the US has the option for the Calligraphy hybrid, the price point is a little bit more expensive, but you get that NHL edition. It's going to cost you a couple bucks, but it still is pretty neat at the same time. Similar to a lot of other vehicles, you're going to find the Santa Fe with front-wheel drive standard, with the option of upgrading to their H-Track, so the all-wheel drive system. In Canada, strictly looking at all-wheel drive. So the question of, if you're in the States, do you look at front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive? It's going to depend on you and what you do and where you live. Because if you're in northern states or somewhere where you're going to get snow, all-wheel drive performs infinitely better than front-wheel drive in the wintertime. You just get better traction all around. But having said that, you live in southern states or you don't really drive often during the wintertime, you can always look at getting a set of winter tires if necessary and get slightly better fuel economy at the same time. Like I said, in Canada, strictly looking at the all-wheel drive system instead, which I just handle so much nicer in comparison. There are a series of different wheel sizes and styles you're going to find inside of the Santa Fe. 19s up to the Calligraphy's 21-inch wheels, which look sharp. You can always do something aftermarket. And if you're not crazy about the design from the factory, hydro dip them instead. You might be looking at $200 a tire in order to hydro dip them, or per wheel, I should say, in order to hydro dip. But you can customize the look and change it up to suit your own style instead. Like a lot of other Hyundai vehicles, you're going to find a lot of front-end technology. The forward sensing system's available there, and as you move up to different trim levels, you'd also have the option for a front-facing camera. And that pairs nicely with the side-mounted cameras for a full 360 view. I just love the way that Hyundai does the 360 camera view. But like I said, this specific package does not have that available. But the overall styling in the front end is so different. It's like they were going for something cyberpunk-esque with the way that the grille is designed inside this vehicle. It is really neat with like the boxy cutout. It's different for sure. And one interesting thing that I found in Hyundai vehicles, they've completely redesigned the lamps. I was just in a Hyundai Sonata that had a light bar along the very top of the hood. This one has it in the middle of the part of the grille, I guess, with the LED headlamps there. And the lights at night look really good inside of this ride. One other neat thing that I found are the headlamps and the tail lamps. So if you look, you actually get a little H inside of both the head and the tail lamps inside the vehicle. Underneath the hood of the Santa Fe, ooh, it's on hydraulics, which is great. I was expecting the old school prop bar. It's nice, but you've got this, the available 1.6 liter turbocharged engine. There are technically two different engine choices that are available inside of the Santa Fe. So it's either this 1.6 liter turbo, or there's the 2.5 liter turbocharged engine instead. What that equates to power-wise is 231 horsepower and 271 pound-feet of torque. And that's combined between the 1.6 liter engine and that little battery. So, gotta do a little 0 to 60 test here. And obviously, have to put yourself into sport mode first, and we're going in 3, 2, and 100. Okay. But when you look at that 2.5 liter turbocharged engine instead, that kicks things up a notch to 277 horsepower and 311 pound-feet of torque. So if power is your thing, you're going to want to go for that 2.5 liter, but don't discount the 1.6 liter in the hybrid either. And the big reason why is you still get a great amount of performance, but you also get improved fuel economy at the same time. Underneath the hood is straightforward. You can easily top up fluids, change your oil. And we know this is the hybrid because there are the orange wires all over the place. And there's a tiny little cover for the hybrid. It's got this nice blue highlight as well. Subtle, but I like it. Now, looking at the warranty inside of the Hyundai world, it's pretty solid. In Canada, the basic and powertrain are a 5-year, 100,000 kilometers. In the States, the basic is a 5-year, 60,000 mile, with the powertrain getting bumped up to an impressive 10-year, 100,000 mile instead. And then the EV hybrid components are covered for 8 years. But you just want to make sure, maintain your ride, perform regularly scheduled maintenance, and at least regular oil changes to get the best possible life out of this vehicle. The rear end styling of the Santa Fe is boxy. Interesting design choice. All of the lamps are located on the lower part of the Santa Fe. I would have liked to have seen some lamps along the left-hand side there instead, so wrapped around the top left and the top right. Especially for turn signals, I think that would probably have made the most sense, but still, the overall design here is pretty unique. The rear sensing system's there. You're always going to have the backup camera and the rear wiper as well. You can also tow inside of the Santa Fe. When you look at the hybrid, you're maxing out at 2,000 pound towing capacity, but inside of the 2.5 liter turbo, you're maxing out at 4,500 pounds. But that's going to depend on which trim level of the vehicle that you're in, and then whether or not you're towing a trailer with brakes or without brakes. This specific one doesn't have the available tow package though, but you can always do something aftermarket. Getting into the trunk of the vehicle can be done a few different ways. There's a button just to the left-hand side of the steering wheel. You can use the key fob to do it. Just underneath the T in Santa Fe in the back there, right below the backup camera, there's a button that you can push. And then there's also the option for the smart power liftgate. So as long as you've got the key fob on you with the feature enabled, all you're going to do, just make sure that you're locked and then get about 10 to 15 feet away for about 10 to 15 seconds. So let's say you just finished going to Costco. You got way too many things, handful of grocery bags, you've got kids, golf clubs, whatever the case may be. Smart liftgate. Such a useful feature, and there are different heights that are available as well, so some different user selectable heights. So if you wanted this to go a little bit further down, a little bit further up, whatever the case may be, you can control that right through the infotainment system, which is great. And then with the third row seats up, there's not much cargo space back here at all. But in order to fold the seats down, it's straightforward. So there's a strap that you can pull along the back, and that's going to lower the headrest. And then just lower, same idea, to the passenger side, and lower it down. And that gives you an incredibly flat fold, which is great. Now, before we get to the second row seats, there's a tiny little storage tray that's carpeted in the back, and lifting it up, you're also going to find the tire sealant kit. So it's essentially the little inflator kit. So there's no spare tire inside the vehicle. It's one thing that I would have liked to have seen. There's more than enough space. You could have put a spare tire there, but one of the nice things about being a Hyundai owner is that you do have access to roadside assistance, and that's good for the same length as the powertrain. Well, I guess technically the basic warranty. It's a 5-year coverage with unlimited mileage, and that's good for things like tire changing, fuel delivery, winching services, things like that. So if you have popped a tire, like I said, there's no spare tire, just the inflator kit. So you could call the 800 number, get towed to the nearest Hyundai dealer to get a new wheel slapped on. If you lock yourself out or you need fuel delivery, that's also available as an option. Along the left-hand side, there's a 12-volt power point and a tiny little storage cubby. And then there are also buttons along the right side to fold down the second row seats. It is going to be a power release down, but it's manual backup instead. But folding it down is straightforward, so just push and hold. And that's going to be for either the driver or for the passenger side. Because this is the bench configuration, it's 60 driver, 40 passenger. But there is the option for the dual captain's chair setup instead. And there is a great amount of space in the cargo area. And then the cargo measurements that you were looking at, they're going from right where the liftgate would close. The one specifically for just behind the first row is just behind that first row armrest. So if that seat was forward, backwards a little bit more for the first row, you'd gain or lose a little bit of extra space. But the overall cargo space inside this ride is amazing. And then if you don't have to get into the cargo area, you can fold down the second row seat along the side instead. And here's the thing. Once the second row seats are down, they are locked down into place. And it's a fairly flat fold, but in order to be able to lift the seats up, there's a lever along the side, and you can grab that in order to easily raise the seat up. And then lifting up the third row seats, also straightforward. So there are straps that you can grab in order to lift that seat up, lift up the headrest, same idea along the passenger side, lift and lift. And it's that simple, making it happen. One thing that I like about the Santa Fe, when the car is locked, so is the fuel door. So you have to unlock in order to get inside, and it's got a cap system in there as well. Looking at fuel quality, you're okay using just regular 87 octane inside this vehicle. There's no need to go for a higher octane fuel. There is the argument of using like an 89 or a 91 inside of a turbocharged engine. It's just that you're okay using 87 inside of these rides. When you look at the overall fuel economy inside of it, the hybrid is going to get way better fuel economy in comparison to the 2.5 liter. On top of that, front wheel drive is going to get better fuel economy than all-wheel drive is. But the overall economy here is great. Like I was averaging about 6.9 liters per 100 on my trip going to pick this car up, which is exactly what Hyundai was saying that this vehicle was going to get. There's no denying that Hyundai made some fairly bold changes to the style of the 2024 Santa Fe. When I first saw it, all I was thinking was Ford Flex and a little touch of Land Rover Defender at the same time. A few touches of the F-150 on the inside, which are kind of neat. I'll show you that one in a second. But I'm 6 feet tall, and this vehicle, plenty spacious. You've got the option for either 6 or 7 people, which I'll touch on in a sec. But getting inside, first row, not challenging by any stretch. Second row, equally as straightforward. That. Lamps in the back. Side view mirrors have the turn signals there as well. Looks solid, but that's going to be hot, so hold on before I hop inside. Just going to roll these windows down a little bit using the key fob. Such a neat feature, but if you want to know some neat key fob tricks, you'll find a walkthrough video down in the description. I just love that one. It's so cool. But you saw there. So the side view mirrors do feature turn signals. It's also got the blind spot monitoring system. So if somebody's entered the blind spot on either side, that's going to highlight to let you know. As long as you've got the key fob on you, you can also push there to lock or unlock the vehicle. It's like, unlock, please. But you've got nice interior. I have that water bottle in there. I'll explain that in a second. But along the driver's side door, there's this interesting little highlight. But I mean, it's different all the way throughout the interior there. And then simple door. So you've got your basic side view mirror controls, window controls, kill off power to the rear windows and doors with a tiny little bottle storage area. It's actually a pretty good amount of space. Basic scuff plate there. And then the seat inside the vehicle. So you've got power, so forwards, backwards, up and down. You can adjust the backrest. And then there's also two-way lumbar support as well. There are a few different seating materials that are available inside of the Santa Fe. Along the outside, you can open and close the liftgate, toggle traction control on or off, and then there's also the electronic parking brake. These are just the regular floor liners that you're going to find inside of the vehicle, so just the regular carpeted mats. I'd honestly recommend upgrading to the thermoplastic rubber trays instead. Whether those are the ones from the factory or aftermarket through WeatherTech, it's just way easier to clean them off in comparison. You can see there also is 12-volt power point and a tiny little storage tray underneath. Ooh, toasty one today. All right, let's do a little start up here. This air conditioning going. That looks nice though. Oh, that's nice. Okay, these windows back up. AC going. Ooh, there we go. Now the seats inside of it, when I first hopped inside, it was a little bit awkward getting the seat set up, but once you do, really straightforward. And there's so much room inside of this car. So this is the seat as far down as it's going to go. I've got, what are we saying there, 4.5+ inches of headspace. It's kind of ridiculous, but pretty cool all at the same time. And yeah, the seat is super comfortable inside of the ride. Now, granted, I've only put about 150 kilometers on it so far. It's got 1,700, it's a press unit, so it's 1,700 kilometers total. And even still, the cushion inside of this car is still pretty solid at the same time. Ooh, it's nice. But the steering wheel is so different. Honestly, I'm going to say it. This is like Land Rover-esque with the overall design that Hyundai's done here. That's exactly what it reminds me of. But you've got your basics, so your buttons for your smart cruise control. There's also a series of other buttons. So a voice command prompt to do things like change songs, radio stations, if you have the option with factory navigation. So otherwise, this button is strictly going to be to control Google or your Google Assistant or Siri Assistant instead. But if you had the option for the infotainment system with factory nav, you'd be able to navigate using your voice, change songs, radio stations, things like that. But this is essentially a dead button otherwise. So there are 2 different cluster screens that are available, 2 different infotainment systems. They're both the same size. It's just that inside of the higher trims of the vehicle, you'd also have the blind spot view monitor. So when you hit the left or the right stick, you'd have a little highlight inside of the cluster screen, essentially utilizing the side-mounted cameras to show you what's going on in your blind spot. So this trim level of the vehicle unfortunately doesn't have it, but that is available as an option. And then like I said, with the infotainment system, it's either going to be this basic setup, and then there's also one with navigation. So with or without, but still, this one is nice because it's got the option for wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. So even though it doesn't have factory navigation, I mean, you could hook up over USB if you really wanted to, but you could also, if you wanted to just hook up wirelessly, have that flexibility too if you're using Google Maps, Apple Maps, or Waze inside of Apple devices, and then Google Maps and Waze inside of Android. This is really good though. They did a pretty solid job on the interior. It's so different. So different. Like obviously a lot of Hyundai styling here. This one you can see has paddle shifters, but because it's the hybrid, the paddles work slightly differently than what you might expect, and it's actually for regenerative braking. So this essentially is going to be the tachometer, I guess I would say. So speedometer off to the left, tachometer off to the right. Because this is the hybrid, so you've got your charge versus eco versus power. So I want you to think of that, like as you go, you essentially, so you've got your tachometer going there. When you're just kind of cruising on the highway, you'll notice in eco, you might be kind of balanced out in the middle. And then as you go to brake, you're going to notice that you'll have charge going there as well. So that's essentially capturing the charge that you've been using inside the vehicle or the brake in order to recharge the battery. But yeah, like I said, if you want a full walkthrough on the cluster screen, or if you wanted to walk through on the buttons here or the infotainment, you'll find it down in the description of the video. But straightforward inside of this ride. You saw there, push button start inside the vehicle. The the shifter here is pretty neat. It might be used to a hand shifter or like a traditional column shifter. This is a shift by wire instead. So you've got your drive, neutral, reverse with a basic backup camera. And then when you go into reverse, you can also see the front and rear park sensing system. So as you get closer or further from obstacles, and then park just on the outside there. It's really neat. And then down here, just a series of basic buttons, dual zone climate control inside the vehicle. And then there's also the option for heated seats. And there's technically the option for ventilated seats in some of the higher trims of the vehicle as well. There's also the option for heated steering wheel, and you can see there. Nice little animation when you do it, but it's heated all the way around. Got a series of other climate control settings. There's the auto hold setting. That one's a neat one because if you're in drive, you take your foot off the brake when you come to a stop and the car's not going to move. Then there are a series of selectable drive modes. So it's either drive versus terrain. So eco, sport versus your own unique drive mode. And then terrain for snow, mud, or sand. Each mode is going to do something different. Like eco if you want the best possible fuel economy. Sport if you want it to hold on to the RPMs a little bit longer. And you can see there when we're in sport mode on the hybrid, it gets rid of the eco and then that power gauge as well. And it essentially shifts it out to a traditional tachometer instead. And then your terrain modes play with traction control, stability control, and things like that. There's downhill control. There's also the backup camera. If you had the full 360 camera, you'd have some additional settings there as well. And then the park sensing system, so that beeping that you get as you get closer to obstacles. You've got a few USB power points, so they're USB Type-C. So you've just got this handy little device that goes from USB type A to USB type C. And then there's the option of pushing here to go for either just charging or charging and then data transfer as well. So we want data transfer because what we're about to do here. And before we listen to audio, there are 2 different speaker choices that you're going to find inside of the Santa Fe. So it's either going to be a 6-speaker audio system standard with the option of upgrading to a 12-speaker Bose when you get into some of the higher trims. The Bose sound system inside of Hyundai vehicles is so good. It sounds great. So I'm actually curious how this one's going to sound because this is the entry-level speaker system instead. So let's do a little media search. And you've got different options there. We're going to go this way for USB music. And the audio that we're listening to, it's coming right out of the microphone here. So there's no post-processing done on this whatsoever. I would say that's pretty good audio. I mean, realistically, that is pretty solid at the same time. All right, now, second audio test is going to be same thing out of the microphone here, but it's more of like a rock type of a song instead. You can tell someone's been playing with the audio settings here, so I didn't do a quick search before I did this to see what they had done, but it's very bass heavy right now, and if we were to jump inside, I guarantee, yeah, look at that. This is not what you want to do inside this car. That just doesn't sound good at all. So you want to go bass, cranked by like 2 or 3 points, treble down by 2, and let's hop back into media for a second there, and another quick little test. This life could be special if I get rid of the devils. They think that I am a rebel. I think they want me to settle. There's no... Yeah, that's the way to do it for sure. So you don't want to have the bass crank. Like you can just tell it just doesn't sound that good when you've got it cranked like that. But having it up a few points, really solid audio inside this ride. For the first row anyways. I'm not sure how it's going to sound in the back, but they don't matter back there. But the audio is pretty good. There's the option for a wireless charge pad inside the vehicle. And then there are cup holders. And the reason why I've got this bottle here, it is so difficult to find a car where that bottle is actually going to fit. And the Santa Fe is one of them. For both the driver and for the passenger side, it is so good. So much space. From there, you've also got an armrest. Decent amount of space in there. It's one of my half wrist deep. And then this is interesting. So it's kind of got this, watch this, weird little drop. So as you go, you hit this like right point, and then it just like magnetically pulls down. So once you get to a certain level, it just drops itself. So odd. So odd. But yeah, it feels really solid. Okay, now here is one thing that they have definitely borrowed from the F-150. Bam! But the downside, though, is that it's not functional space by any stretch. Like, you can't really, maybe a cell phone, if you wanted to drop that in there. But outside of that, like if it was a little bit taller, it'd be useful space. So that's one thing that I would like to see improved. A little bit more functional space there. I've also got this interesting little handle to drop down with, actually, you can see that, even a tiny little tray above the glove box there. But yeah, dropping the glove box down, there's a pretty solid amount of space in there. That's good. You've got that same highlight that runs all the way throughout the dash there, passenger side. Nothing too crazy passenger side control-wise. You've got a speaker along the top. Manual dimming, rear view mirror inside of this trim. Up overhead, there's the SOS mode, so if you need to call a tow truck. You've also got controls here for front and rear. So these aren't going to be standard. But before I get there, there's also basic light controls as well. So all on, do you want the lights to turn off with the doors open, whatever the case may be. And then 2 different controls because there are 2 different sunroofs. So you can see there, it's not a full panoramic roof, but let's go rear first. So you can open up the rear shade there easily enough, which is great. Just opens things up nicely. And then here, manual sliding. The one cool thing is that you can also, let's do a push there. That's just going to open it up. That last little bit. There we go. That's as far open as it's going to go, but that just opens the car up so nicely. It would be nice to see a full panoramic roof, but still, It's pretty good. Actually, hold on. How does that look from the outside? The roof's with the roof open. Okay, yeah, so it's up and over. Well, it still looks pretty good though. And then button press to close. Once it's closed, you also do have the option. Yeah, you can see it there. So you can create a little cross breeze if you wanted to. Huh. Neat. And there, the headliner. So just a basic cloth in this trim. There you've got vanity mirror. Light, as always, up over top. And then, please, 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 does this extend out? Oh yeah, extends out to block all of the sun that might be hitting your face. There's a little holy crap handle along the driver passenger side in the first row as well. But yeah, let's make sure. Okay, there we go. So the driver's seat set up the way that I would traditionally drive. And let's go back into the second row. Oh, that's nice. All right, so along the second row, you've got that same highlight you saw along the first. Basic window controls with some cup holders and a bottle holder. Little speaker. And then, ooh. Oh, that's good. All right, so with the driver's seat set up for myself being 6 feet tall, inside of the second row, I've got a great amount of foot space and knee space. And up overhead, with me sitting fully upright, 2.5-ish inches of headspace. Ooh. Yeah, there we go. 2.5 inches of headspace, which is still pretty good at the same time. And one nice thing, there's a lever along the side, so you'd use that in order to fold the seat down. But you can also, oh yeah, go back far. Look at that recline. Oh, that's nice. That's nice and comfortable. Now, the second row seat's obviously nowhere near as comfortable as the first row, but still, it's pretty good. And there are 2 different seat setups that you're going to find inside the vehicle. So really the only difference is going to be what's going on with this bench seat in the middle. So the first row, you're always going to have 2 seats. The second row, you're always going to have 2 seats. The third row, sorry, I should say you're always going to have 2 seats. The second row is either going to be 2 or 3, depending on the trim level of the vehicle that you're in. So you go for that calligraphy, you're going to have a dual captain's chair set up inside the vehicle. But so the seat here, comfy in the middle seat. Ooh. It's like the forgotten seat in every car. It's not comfortable by any stretch. But I actually have a little bit of like a significant amount of head space just because this thing is open right now. But yeah, I wouldn't want to get stuck in the middle seat of the second row. But luckily there are anchor points there, top tethers behind the seats if you need them. But it's not bad. I actually have space here, which is kind of nice. You've got a little vent along the passenger and the driver's side. There's a little handle, hook, and a light as well. Pockets behind both the driver passenger side. There's a little mat pocket. And then one thing that I like about the Hyundai world, power points built right into the seats there. So very useful. Dropping down. Ooh. Hello? Bueller? Bueller? Oh, there we go. Oh, that was unexpected. I was not expecting that. Honestly, I didn't test this out before I jumped back here. I was expecting that it was going to drop down. This is like crazy slidable tray. What the heck? So neat. Huh. Interesting. Okay, hold on. Now, one thing I want to do, let's move this seat as far forward as it's going to go for the next test. And let's hop back to that third row. Okay, so getting into the third row is straightforward. So along the top, there's a button there that you can push. Along the bottom, there's also a button that you can push. And then this is to fold the seat down. So if you wanted to drop it down, you're going that way to make it happen. Or, like I said, button press there in order to hop into the third row. I mean, not overly difficult to get back here. Okay. I want to try to find the, okay. So this seat essentially is as far back as it's going to go. I don't know about that one. Hold on. Let's do that. So that's as far forward. Let's go as far back. Okay, there we go. All right, so it's as far back as it'll go now. I still have space back here, but this seat is more upright. So if it wasn't as far upright, I mean, it'd be tight, but I mean, I could still fit back here, which is kind of nice. Plenty of space up overhead. Surprising amount of space back here. Huh. Like not much, like 1 inch and change, but still I can actually fit in the third row. When I first saw this car, I didn't think I was going to fit in the third row of this thing. Huh. That's kind of neat. And you reclined a bit too, like, which is, I think, even neater. It's like, it's not comfortable though. It's way more comfortable than the middle seat of the bench in the second row. But these third row seats, I mean, I'm also 180 pounds. So realistically, like if you had kids, they'd probably be okay back here. It's just because I'm a little bit bigger. Not quite as comfy. Still pretty nice though. The third row is simple. You've got a little power point there, a little vent control with a few cup holders. And that's the same story along this side to a degree. Yeah, you've got your power point there, but you've also got HVAC controls for the rear. So you can control, oh, that's so nice. Oh, that's so good right now. Oh, it's so hot back here. That's so good. So you can control third row HVAC this way as well. So toggle it on or off, and which level for both sides. So good. There's a little light up overhead as well. That's the same for the passenger as it is for the driver's side. And then getting out, you see the button there, so you can get it all on the passenger or along the driver's side there instead. And then this one is as far forward as the seat's going to go. So like realistically, I mean, 6 feet tall, if people had to sit back here for like a short trip and things like that, they'd be able to fit okay. Like I said, the tether points are there, anchor points are there for the second and for the third row. And then getting out. Not too challenging by any stretch. But this is the hybrid version of the Santa Fe. So let's go for a quick spin, see how it handles. All I could think about when I first saw the new Santa Fe, a mix between the Ford Flex and then a Land Rover Defender. It's an interesting style choice for sure. And it has a pretty decent amount of power as well. Handling wise, even pick up and go. They're pretty solid inside of this car. Not bad. And one of the neat things about the Santa Fe hybrid is that it's a traditional hybrid, so it's not a plug-in. But it's such a seamless transition when it goes from the gas to electric mode. Inside of the cluster screen, you get a little message that just pops up that says EV on the very bottom right-hand side. So it's a very subtle indication that you're now in the EV drive mode instead. But like it's quick. It happens really subtly. It's more or less when you're just coasting. So you're on the highway just coasting along. All of a sudden you'll notice if you're on your trip counter, the fuel economy that you're using is going to drop down to 0. And then you'll have that little EV message pop up inside of the cluster screen. But overall fuel economy inside of the ride has been pretty good so far at the same time as well. So I was trying to kind of max out the fuel economy that I could get inside, but like get the best possible economy. And I was averaging about 6.9 liters per 100, which is like exactly what Hyundai was saying that the car would get. I'm hoping to do a little bit more of a distance drive to see if I can get that to improve a little bit more, but about a 60 kilometer trip, little bit of stop and go traffic, 6.9 liters per 100 is pretty good at the same time. As always, have to do a little handling test here. I mean, so if you had to get out of the way of something that pops up onto the road, the Santa Fe's got you covered there. It is a taller vehicle though, so the risk of a rollover is higher in comparison to if you were driving in a sedan. But at the same time, that is pretty good handling inside of this ride. And let's see, you got to pull a Yui. Ooh, am I gonna have to 3-point turn it? No, it's gonna run into these bushes. All right, so a little bit tight on that 180 that I just did there, that U-turn, but still, it wasn't terrible at the same time. It's coming up to the last little bit of being inside of the Santa Fe, and I gotta say, the one thing that I really, really liked inside of this car was the fuel economy and the surprising amount of power. I wasn't really expecting the power to be that good inside of this ride, with it being a 1.6 liter turbo hybrid and all, but still, the combined power output is really, really solid inside of this ride. I like it.